Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode in a brand new series called Siege Sessions, where I talk to people in and around esports about how they got to their position and all the intricacies of the role that they currently hold. Today's session is all about coaching inside of Rainbow Six Siege, and I am joined by three of the best. I'd like everyone to welcome in Kenny, Callout, and Eden. Guys, how's everyone doing?
Hello.
Hello. So this is the fun one, right? We've got four guests here. We've got four people in total today. So we're going to try to go through all these sections nice and quickly and provide an open space for everyone to talk. So first off, we'll start on the top with Kenny. Kenny, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody at home?
My name's KangruKenny. Real name Ryan, has come to a surprise for a lot of you. I coach Into the Breach in EUL currently. I made my rise through Tier 2 in EU, with 10-star most notably, that I've been on one team throughout my whole life inside of esports with 10-star, and then transitioned into the Breach in August of last year.
And next up is Callout.
Name is Callout. Coached Astralis and now SSG. Used to play professionally back in 2020 and then early 2021. And yeah, I've kind of been around Siege, since the beginning. Just whether that be T3 or T1, just been back and forth for a while.
Mm-hmm. And then up next, we've got Eden.
Hello, Eden, the French guy of the team. I've started Siege on day one, like most of the guys. And I waited a bit before jumping into competitive. Then I've done few French teams until I joined M&M when we were still in Challenger League. And then we got up to EUL, and I coached them for 2 years. And everyone know the end story. Mm-hmm. And then I'm now coaching another team that's going to be announced soon, I hope.
Well, it should be a lot of fun today. I've picked each and every one of you for different reasons. You've all had very different careers up to this point. Kenny, of course, being the newest to Tier 1 scene, but he had the Cinderella run with 10-star where they won nearly every competition they took part in before he finally got the opportunity to come to this level. Callout, you and I have met a few times in the past. You had that wonderful run with Astralis that, you and I both agree could have gone that little bit further. And then Eden, you revolutionized Charlie in particular along with the M&M roster that you had. So it should be a ton of fun as we get into things. But the first topic that I really want to talk about is philosophy, right? Because every single coach, it doesn't matter whether it's esports, whether it's traditional sports, has their own philosophy. You've got authoritarians out there. You've got people who like to allow the people around them to have a big input on what they say. So I want to get a good idea of what you guys' philosophy is when it comes to coaching. And I think just keeping with the format of, going from top and then working our way around. We'll kick off with you, Kenny.
My philosophy is that the players are people first and players second. So I'm very people focused, and I suppose it comes from my background of psychology. I've studied psychology a fair bit throughout my younger years. Although I'm not that old. It's weird saying younger years when I'm only 24. But everyone in a team, in any environment you're going to be playing in or performing in or any kind of workplace, you're not going to perform at your best unless you're A, happy, B, confident, and C, trusting. And that comes down to, in a Siege environment specifically, that you've got to A, respect all your team, trust all your team. You've got to get along with them. I think of myself as a coach. I am everyone's friend first, and then they still respect me as their higher up coach. It's a fine line between having a friendly team, and then obviously you've got to still keep the discipline in. And I think that I do keep a fine line of I'm laughing, joking. I'm there with the team as just another person. But if I need to, I can be strict and I can draw the line when things get, say, out of hand or there's discipline goes awry, So I think I'm very people focused first, and then you have to, once you get all those components together, that people get comfortable, and then that's when you start seeing the confidence come out, because people only play confident when they're comfortable, and you've got to start with who you have in the team first, and that's how I've always built my teams. That we may have necessarily trialed better players for the role, but the people we've picked up have always fit in with the feel, the vibes, and just the personality of the team. And I think that you can see that trickle down into the two recent pickups for Into the Breach going into stage 1, Creeds and Oscar. They're very young, very unknown. Potentially could have had, more experienced or notable players there, but both of them fit fantastically into the ethos of the team and fit with my philosophy and the team's philosophy of how we play the game. So wherever I coach, there's a common philosophy and identity, and then we build on that through player relationships, and then that feeds into the game. If everyone trusts each other, we're making calls more confidently, we're listening to calls more confidently, and then that trickles down into the team play coordination aspect.
So you spoke about the whole concept of being friends with your team first, and has that ever led to any issues? Because obviously as a coach, you've got a big say when it comes to making roster changes. Having that balance of being a friend with these players first and foremost, do you think that adds any more difficulty to these decisions, or do you think that you've set enough of a, guideline down to the players whenever they first joined that they knew this would be something that could happen?
It definitely is tough. Thankfully, I've only had to drop less than 5 players in my time, I think. I've never had to really, well, through 10 star, they're always taken away from me rather than me giving them away. It is difficult, but everyone understands at the first part that at the end of the day, at this level, this is a business now. And performance still has to be kept up, and the relationships are there to heighten the ceiling of the team, but obviously hard decisions do have to happen sometimes. I think everyone understands that occurs in esports. People have to make tough decisions, and that's an understanding of the team. I think dropping Yonka was very tough for me before this stage, because I was with him in Tensar for over 18 months, and obviously when you're in an environment every day with someone for a year and a half, you're going to build a strong bond. So it makes it tough, but speaking to Jonas when we did make the decision, he's obviously takes it hard, but he understands that these things have to happen. And I think that's a growing identity, that people understand that.
And, I'll put this question to all of you. Is that how difficult are those conversations to have with the players? Because for the most part, these are tier 1 players. Yonka in particular had played at the highest level in the past. Is it hard to sit them down, and how over how long of a period of time does it usually take? Because as a coach, I suppose when you think about player performance, you're going to put yourself into that too, because you're kind of in a way responsible for players getting better at what they do.
I would say it's for me at least, I've always been the hardest to tell a player that is going to be changed. It's not something, to be honest, that happened like after one day. Usually as a coach, you start to feel it coming. Like you see in scrims, the guy is not in it anymore, is kind of dropping down, going behind the others, etc. I take the example of Neo, for example. It was before Yon dropping major, so the scrim for this stage were not good with him. He was constantly lacking behind, stopped working outside of the game, of the team, etc. And then we had few talks. We tried to make him change, tried to change him positions, etc. But that was not working. So we've gone to the major and we failed our major. And so after that, that's usually the time that players start to speak to you about like, yeah, this dude is not performing. We will have to change him, etc. We want to make a change. And then you have to take responsibility as a coach to talk to the player, make him realize that it's the end. You're gonna have to change him and not think about what to do next, basically.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Callout?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it sucks to get rid of a player every time, obviously, because especially that conversation is usually very awkward. And it's usually pretty sad because that person's losing their job a lot of times. It's never usually just like a straight transition to another team or something like that. It also depends on like the situation for me as well. Like with Hot and Cold, for example, he was like probably one of the most committed players that I've seen to the system and to like the culture and like working hard. Like he had no issues other than we thought we had a better option, right? So like dropping a player like him is a lot harder than dropping a player like Merc, for example, where there was issues within the team. So it's like with that specifically, like that's very hard, I will say, because he showed up every day, he did his job, he gave his full effort to the team, but there was just a better opportunity, and those are always the ones that sting the most, I would say.
Yeah, and while we have you on the screen, Callout, why don't you fill in the viewers about your philosophy and how you approach coaching?
All right. Well, I think I touched on this last time I talked to you. The most important thing to me is the culture of the team, and I think that player excellence and the person, they need to kind of grow together, if that makes sense. So it's like I don't just purely focus on the growth of the player; it's also the growth of the person. So that comes through helping them get healthier, helping them become in a better mental state, helping them out in their life and whatever that might be to help them just be a healthier individual, which will in turn make them a better player, right? So there's a massive emphasis on our team when it comes out of game stuff. We call it performance factors. When it comes like are you sleeping right, are you eating right, exercising within a reasonable amount, obviously, and then just overall helping them build better routines, helping them build better lifestyles out of the game to then allow that transition end game and for them to be more effective players. And then that's kind of like where it all starts, honestly. And then it's an absolute rat's nest to kind of talk about the rest, but I'll try to give you the best overview I can. We'll start as well, like another thing is like decentralizing the command of the team as much as possible, right? Where it's like, and pretty much everything that happens, I have the final say, but at the same time, I don't want the guys to feel like, I'm just being like, a dictator to them. So I like to kind of decentralize as much as possible. So whether that be throughout the staff, whether that be throughout the players, we give each person like, a responsibility within the team, if that makes sense. Where it's like, right now, the way it works end game especially is like we have Iconic where he'll be the main IGL. So he has the final say on everything end game. And then Forrest is primarily attack focused mid round, late round, and then Fultz is primarily defensive focused mid round, late round. And then they three all kind of work together off that. Ashen is responsible for all like we call them prompts basically. So it's like, getting your resets out, where we get our drones at, spawns, stuff like that. And then you have Jan, I know, who's responsible for the details. And then he'll kind of like go through and be like, okay, guys, like, we got to be, making sure we're getting the correct strat name out, things like that. And then Alo's got the defense, and then I do the attack primarily, along with like the overarching stuff. So it's another thing we do, like decentralize. And then, like I said, it's pretty much like starts with the culture, goes into human performance, and then you decentralize the command, and then kind of just let things grow organically. That's kind of the way I like to do it.
And it's worked out pretty good for you guys so far at this stage. Hopefully it continues that way. And Eden, you were obviously the head coach of M&M during that great run, right? You went to every single international event that was on at the time. Once you qualified, because I think you were the last team, right, to qualify to Tier 1 through the old system before everything became a bit more franchised. Is your
sorry to Kenny, we closed the door behind us.
Unbelievable. You would do that to a fellow UK team.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
But is your approach to coaching any different than the other two? Is there some overlap with what they said, or is your philosophy a little bit different?
Yeah, there is a lot of overlap, to be honest. As both of them said, like we are not only training and coaching players, we are coaching people first. So one of the things I really do first and want to do is having them in an environment where they feel safe and they feel trusted. So that's two things that is absolutely needed if you want a team to perform, if you want players to communicate, to be open with each other, to give ideas, etc. So that's what I'm trying to build first with the teams. And then there is all the autonomous aspects of the players in game, because obviously when you're at home and you're coaching them, it's no problem. You can talk in between the rounds. If you want, you can even bother them during the rounds. But when you go in EUL or into international stage, then you have 45 seconds over 12 rounds or more to talk. So they need to be autonomous. They need to find solutions by themselves. So what I do is set up this environment where they can speak, give IDs, etc., and then trying to make it translate into the game. And obviously, as Callout said, I also coach them, onto life habits, etc. Because if you sleep well, if you eat well, if you do a bit of sports on regularly every weeks, then your performance gonna be higher, and that's you're not gonna be like super down for 2 games and then super high from going from top fragger to bottom fragger. So it's really good to have a discipline outside of the game too, and that's what I'm trying to push on every players I have.
So something all three of you touched on at some point was the aspect of sleep, exercise, mental and physical well-being. I'm going to ask you all, is there any worries though? Because obviously you're encouraging players to play sports, to go to the gym. You play rugby, for example, Callout. I know that in the US, American football is a pretty big hobby. Is there any fear about the players playing some of the more physical sports and getting hurt in a way that would impact their ability to play? Whether they hurt their hands, whether they hurt their wrists. So I suppose we'll go to you first, Callout. Like, is there a balance that you have to kind of push as a coach on that?
Yeah, so a couple of our guys right now, they're really into kind of like combat sports, so it's like, MMA style stuff. And then, well, we kind of talked about, we had this conversation on the team because, they want to start doing kickboxing and stuff, which is like, you're doing a lot of striking with your hands and your wrists. Obviously, there's a lot of injury prone right there. So it's like, shift that more like, hey, let's do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for right now, right? And then we can go into that, later on, kind of after you're done being a player, is what we kind of talked about. And then with the actual workouts themselves, obviously the impact on the joints is something you have to worry about. So I'll actually, like, every week, I started doing this recently, where I'll like actually create like the workout program for the guys who want to do it. And then like it's intentionally meant to be low impact on like those joints, especially like, the elbow, the wrist, and the shoulder. And then kind of working around that with a bit more, kind of lighter weight compound movements with higher reps. So that way, joint injury is not as big of a risk, but you're still getting that volume in on the muscle work that you need to get in. And that's kind of what we've been doing.
Yeah. On your end?
I had players that was just mostly going to the gym, so it's kind of the same. Not much risk from going to the gym. But yeah, I had them like tired or overtired sometimes during streams. But over the experience they do themselves, at some point they just understand that if they go to the gym an hour before the stream, it's not gonna be effective. So yeah, it was not much of a problem, I think, for me in the previous team.
Kenny, about you? Anything to add, or do you think your guys have behaved themselves pretty well?
I have nothing really to add. My players just go to the gym as well, and they always do it after scrims, so it doesn't affect, effort and how much energy they have going into the day. Especially if it's a long day, if you're doing an hour workout before, you could potentially get to flag towards, map 5 or map 6. So they're always just going after. But I think they're all my players currently, they understand. They already have their regime. I don't really need to put anything onto them. I've just kind of come in, and people already have their regime themselves. So I don't really have much to put onto them.
Yeah. So the next topic I want to talk about is good and bad coaching, right? We've all been in the scene long enough. The esports scene's been around for long enough that we've seen examples of good coaching and bad coaching in every single region. So what I kind of want to know is, in your careers as coaches, have you seen any examples of good coaching? You can even highlight something you've done yourself, or bad coaching and what you learned from it. I think to change things up this time, I'll go to you first, Eden.
I've seen bad coaching. Yeah, I've seen it from the first row, I would say, before I got promoted to head coach. Bad behaviors are when you haven't a good relationship with players first, I would say, and then you just kind of ask them too much, or want to force them into playing a way that they won't know how to play or can't play. It was happening, to be honest, with M&M over the first few months as we've come to EUL. The coach that was previously in place was forcing them to play a gameplay that on the paper would have been really good, but was not effective for us. And this coupled with the fact that players were already not into an environment where they were trusting the coach, then that was just a time bomb ticking. So that's also why we missed the first stage we've come into after coming to UL. But yeah, I've seen it. It's not it have consequences on like when this happen. But if you take the team with another coach or just change the staff, then it can be reversed. But it takes time, obviously, to reverse it back.
And what about you, Callout? Have you ever had any situations in your career where you've seen bad coaching? Maybe you've done some bad coaching yourself, and how you kind of fix that, and then how you'd give an example of what really good coaching is.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely had scenarios where I've done, things that, I shouldn't have done, especially early on in my career, kind of learning how to coach correctly. I think like the biggest thing, I'm not going to, like, this is from another person that coached me before. I'm not going to say the name. I've been coached with multiple people. I don't think anybody's going to figure it out anyways. But like, I think one of the biggest things you cannot do as a coach is you cannot not lead by example, if that makes sense, right? Or it's like, kind of like Eden said, like, roughly where it's like, asking the players to kind of, do a lot of stuff, especially if you're not doing a lot of stuff yourself. I think that's one of the worst examples of coaching, where it's like, if I want my guys to be living healthy and stuff out of game and, doing all this stuff, I've got to first do it myself, right? And they've got to have an example to follow off that. So if I'm just going to be a slob and, just roll around all day and just not really do much and not work hard, show up late to practice, stuff like that, then I'm like getting on their ass about doing all those same things. That's probably the worst thing I think you can do as a coach or any kind of leadership position. Is just being a hypocrite, basically. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that firsthand before when I was a player.
Yeah. What about you, Kenny? Any, your career's been mostly spent, as you said, with just two teams, right? You've been with ITB and 10 Stars. So anything you kind of want to add to that?
I agree with Callout and Eden that you have to lead by example. You exactly what Callout said. You literally can't be doing things wrong that you then bring your same team up, that you bring your team up on the same thing for. I think good coaching stems from catering to the players, and touching on Eden's point that you can't necessarily force a play style onto a team. You have to understand the way that the players want to play, in my opinion, and then mold how you not force, I hate using the word force, but how you coach a play style onto a team to round it off. I think the way I look at it is you bring the ideas from all 5 players, and your role as a coach is to mold that into one identity. And if you have your own play style that you then force people to play, I think that's where you then go wrong, because players might not feel comfortable playing it. And you may have one of the best players at being a free spirit, being on a complete free roll. But if you then try and put that player in a really hard system where he's just a system player, he has no freedom, he can't think for himself, he just has to do X, Y, Z, you never get the best out of the players. So you really have to look at, or what I do, you really just have to look at the individual strengths of everyone and then see how you can mold that into a cohesive unit. Bad coaching, I think we've all seen it, and I think that stems from the points I touched on.
Yeah, one thing you made me thought about is you can be a good coach by having one play style you know by heart and know how to basically make the player play around this play style. But as you said, if you force it, you can be the best coach, for example, in a I would say in fast-paced play style, and to make your player being super quick on the entry, super quick on the push and pressure on site. But if you go around a team that it may take his air time to clear, that take 2 minutes before going near the site, and you try to force them, then that's not gonna happen. Being a coach is hard in the way that sometimes player needs to adapt, but you yourself into how you coach and what you do as a coach need to adapt to every team you come across, and even every player you come across.
Yeah, those are all really good points, and I think that's a good spot to end that topic to move on to the next one, which is when problems do arise, right? which I know that they're going to. Like, it happens in every single field of life. It happens to me in my day job. How do you as a coach approach those problems, right? Because some problems are a lot easier to solve than others, right, Callout?
Yeah. We have this like set list of standards basically and core tenets where it's like, I think I told you this before, where when you think of SSG, obviously, a lot of people, when it comes to problems, it becomes very subjective in a sense of where, people start going through and it'll start just coming like bouncing. And a lot of times you get caught in this like wheelhouse where it's like, you're just going in circles basically, especially within an issue with a team when it comes to strategy or maybe a player, maybe an attitude or something like that. You'll just go in circles and circles and circles and nothing will ever be, given as a solution. So what we did at the beginning of Astralis, we did it again at the beginning of SSG with the players, is we all got together. We read out everything that we wanted as a standard for the team, like this is what we hold each other to, and then we identified, okay, and we agreed that this is what SSG now is, right? It's like SSG is not the coach, it's not the players, it is this culture and it is this system, right? And then now whenever we have an issue, it becomes extremely simple to actually go through and solve because, it's something that every player's agreed on, every coach has agreed on, that this is how we're going to solve these issues, and it makes things very simple, right? And then you'll just go through and you'll look at it and be like, okay, this happens, this is how we deal with it, and then we deal with it and we go on the next thing, and it keeps things very simple. And we have only had one issue that was not able to be solved with that, and that was due to somebody not, kind of going back on their word with it, and that was at the very beginning of the team. And outside that, it's been working out for us so far.
Yeah, I think the problem solving stems from the environment and everyone understanding that we're all here turning up every day to win, and we're all here for a common goal. So if there's ever disagreements or there are issues, discourse is the best solution. Just speaking, just let people know. Like people can have two different opinions, but I've had problems in the past where there have been an issue or a disagreement, and they both actually speak their opinion on the matter, and they both actually believe the same thing. They're both believing the same thing, but they're disagreeing because they want to be right, if that makes sense. So I think you all just have to understand that no one's ever gonna get on. No team's ever gonna get on every day of the week. No one's there's always gonna be clashes. That's just human nature. You're always gonna be opinionated. You're always going to favor yourself over someone else in some regards. So it's just about understanding that okay, you've got your point, I've got my point, and then you speak it out, and nothing's ever going to get solved unless if people bottle it up. I think you just have to speak, and you just have to find a common middle ground, and if there is no agreement, then you just agree to disagree. That's just life, and you can move on. There just has to be you just have to tie it up somehow, in my opinion. And most of the time, 99% of the time, that's a positive tie-up, so it doesn't linger going into other days. But you can always tell if there's tension going into other days, and if there is, then that's your job as a coach to iron out that tension and resolve something further.
I agree. I think as long as you've set up goals before, like both in games and outside the games, like you reduce the fact that players are clashing or troubles are just coming up. But when they are here, then, as Kenny said, just speak about it. Usually, you find either you agree with one or the other, or you find a middle ground. I had I think 2 or 3 times players like that have really different visions and couldn't agree, and at some point you have to make a decision. Either you as a coach or the team, the other one on the team, we talk all together and said, okay, this is the vision we agree to, and the guy that have the different vision need to step down and understand that this is not the way the whole team want to play. So if the whole team want to play fast and not slow, for example, then okay, we go with the fast vision. And the one that play slow, just gonna follow the other ones, and that's it.
Thank you. So that's that for that topic. The next topic is going to be more so around players itself, and even in my day-to-day job, one of the things that we focus on a lot is personality styles, right? You've got people who are leaders, you've got people who are kind of fall into the category of creators. You know, sometimes it's very hard to get a creator to focus on something. Then you got people who like to be told exactly how to do things, and when you do that, they're going to be happy. So, as a coach, when it comes to dealing with individual players, is that something that crosses your mind? Like you change your management style or your leadership style depending on what the player's personality is like?
I would say so. 100%. You have to take everything as a case by case basis in a team. If you change players, you have to fundamentally understand them as a person before you can excel at coaching them individually. And if it goes down to building the team first, that you have to have the personalities that Max and Mitch, but you can and you should have a balance. You should have people in a team who are more leadership focused and take control, because I don't think there's any environment in a social setting where a team of people or a group of people doesn't excel with a leadership figure. And that leader, you could argue that leadership figure could be the coach, but as Eden said way back in his when he's speaking about his philosophy, when you're in a game scenario, the coach only has 45 seconds of the entire game to influence. Obviously, if there's a second timeout, then, but you only have one timeout where you can force it. So that group has to then be independent of you in the environment where it matters, which is an official game, and that's where we all strive to perform in, is the official game. So you have to build, in my opinion, the balance of leadership figures to not more passive people, but you've got to have, you know, the listeners in the team, and then you've got to have the leadership, and that you can, and you should outline that, as Callout said earlier, like when you sit down as a team and you go, okay, this is your job, this is your job, this is your job, like in the rounds, to give everyone a set identity and knowing what they have to do as their job in the game. And then you kind of naturally flow into the team having a good discourse and the team having a good mini hierarchy, if that's so to say.
For me, I would say that personality is very important. Like when I go with a team, one of my first check is to see what kind of people I have on the team. Sometimes people say, yeah, this team is not gonna work. They have like 4 fraggers, but this is just the tip of the iceberg we can see. The reality is you can have 4 fraggers, but if one of them is a leader, 3 are followers, then it's good. That's gonna work. So that's one of the first thing. And if I have to make a player change, obviously I'll go with personality of the guy, like how he behave with the others, but also if he's a leader, if he's a builder, if he's gonna bring down the mood of the team or things like that. So it's very important. And as Kenny said, you have to adapt every time, even when you make one player change. On the paper, it's not much. It's only 1 out of 5, but in the end, it can change a lot of the dynamic of the game. It can give a second breath to your team, or it can just kill it. So sometimes it's also hard to make a change because of this.
Yeah, and then kind of going over that, you know, you kind of discussed earlier the hierarchy of the team. I think that's like incredibly important to have that. You know, something I kind of learned from my dad. He was a military guy for his whole life, pretty much, and like, obviously, we don't run the team like the military. It's more so like a sports team, but like, you've got to have that distinction on in what scenario who has the final say in it. I believe, especially in game, because previously we didn't do that. A lot of times, what would happen, there would be indecisiveness, especially in really high pressure games where, you know, the guys wouldn't always be on the same page. So like, whenever you have it where it's like, okay, this guy has the final say here, and then it's this guy, and then it's this guy, that makes things go a lot easier within the team, and also, you know, within that problem-solving aspect, kind of like Eden, you were saying earlier, where, you know, sometimes, like, especially when people are in disagreement, you've just got to sometimes just take the decision on it, and I think having kind of that hierarchy pre-established makes it a lot easier to be able to, you know, go ahead and do that, where it's like, okay, we're all in disagreement right now, we just got to take the decision, here's who's taking the decision, and we're doing it, and then if everyone respects that and everyone agrees to it, it makes things go a lot smoother within the team environment.
Yeah, those are all pretty good points on that side. I think it's something that maybe, as even in my role as a caster, you don't really think about all too often. So I want to talk about the overall staff side of things, right? So it's not just you guys when it comes to a team. You've got analysts that work alongside you. You're going to be working directly with the orgs at times as well. Maybe social media teams. Like there's more the coaching than just dealing with a team. So I want to talk about how each of you deal with, the other side of things, with your analysts, with the org. Is there do you kind of work as the main point of information when it comes to working with the people inside the org? Is there other people involved? I'll start off with you, Callout.
Yeah, so kind of the way that it works here, at least it was different on Astralis. On Astralis, I was like the general manager and the coach, but here I have a general manager that I report to. So it's basically like I talk directly to him, and then he basically takes the decisions, for the org at that point. And then along with me, we have our assistant coach. It was Mango before, now it is Aloe. They recently announced, and kind of our the dichotomy in the way that we work is essentially, he handles a lot of the in-game defensive stuff, and he does some analytics as well, some very basic analytics on that, and then I will do the kind of overall, along with focusing in game specifically on the attack side a lot, and that's kind of how we tend to work with each other. That's pretty much like the staff point of view right there, I'll tell you, for our team at least.
Personally, when I work with staff, what I prefer to have first is a manager, because a lot of questions that are being done to the manager are getting back into my hands when there is none, and those questions are usually like outside of the game or think not or less useful for the team, I would say, like media day things, booking screens, etc. So that's the first. And second, when I have an analyst also to help me, I ask him obviously stats. I ask him to watch a bit of scrims that depend on what we agree and what he can do or have time to do. And yes, assistant coach, never really got like a one fixed assistant coach with me. So I can't really talk for this one. But yeah, I also have to have a good relationship with the other staff. I like them to feel included to the team, because I think that it's not just 5 players or 6, 5 players with one coach that perform. It's a whole system built around the team, and all the staff than coach or head coach are also very important to this.
I've kind of been independent most of my career, so I've just through 2.5 years with 10 Star, I've just kind of done everything myself. So when I joined ITB with Leonsky, obviously it changed very much going into the professional environment, and I had a general manager in Blaney above me going to the org, and then I had Leonsky alongside me, and me and Leon, we just sat down at the start and we spoke to each other about what are you good at, what am I good at, and then we worked in harmony, really. We just understood what each other's strengths were, and then we just let each of us deal with what we were good at, whether it be the analytics side, whether it be counter prep, whether it be internals, whether it be more like big goal stuff, individual or team focuses. They were just really delegated to either of us, and if one of us needed to take on more, or vice versa, then we were happy to do so. Leonsky was still doing his master's degree at the same time, so if he had a particular busy week, then I would take on slightly more, and I was happy to do so. And now I have an external analyst for this season, CD, who does all our counter prep. So yeah, I'll give him like a digestion of what I expect from his prep for the week. Expected maps that he doesn't need to care about at all. What we're looking for from the prep, because I think when you go to an analyst, you need to cater to the prep to the team that you're facing, because you have different win conditions for different teams. If you play Virtus Pro, it's very different to play if you play G2. They play completely different sieges, so your counter analysis should be different. And I just detail him what I need from him, and then he'll come back to me, in a few days with some really good work that we take into the game day.
That actually segues really nicely onto our next topic, Kenny, which is all around the concept of VOD reviewing and, counter-stratting and prepping. And I think basically I want to know, as a viewer, when it comes to VOD reviews, what are you particularly looking at? How many times would you watch back the same VOD to get all the information that you would need? And are these VOD reviews like social things where you'll do it with a whole team and it's an open forum for everybody to talk about it? Or is it something where it's specifically an analyst will do it alongside the coach and you'll feed that information back to the team or individual members one by one? And I'll go to you first with this one, Eden.
I had this chance with M&M that almost all of the players were watching Siege all day. So they were watching almost every game live, plus rewatching them. So they knew almost everything that happened in the game. But I was still doing one VOD review on my own, like taking notes, taking hints and what we could change, etc. Like questions or adaptation we could do for teams. And then we had this team time, or we're all 6 together just watching the VOD. We are doing it basically 5 to 7 days prior to the game. And so we had full weeks of scrim to adapt and to change things in our gameplay that needed to be changed. But yeah, it was something done together. We're discussing about the changes I was asking or thinking about all together. Players were giving hints about like what they're gonna do, if they're gonna change their entry point, the way to push, etc., or drone placement. So yeah, it was mostly done in a group, but because everyone liked it and everyone wanted to be involved.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've always had a team who's willing to sit down themselves and just watch Siege and EUL play days. If we're one of the earlier games, we'll usually just as a team just watch the rest of the games. If there's a team that we're facing in the next week, and then we'll just generally watch, and I'll watch a VOD on my own or a couple of VODs, and then I'll come the next day before scrims and I'll start giving ideas, and I'll be like, okay, this is exploitable, this is something that we can work into what we're practicing for the next day. And it can be the same. The players are on their own accord go and watch, some VODs, and they go, oh, I notice this, and I can exploit this on game day. I think when I watch, I specifically look for just habits. Obviously, drone placements are nice, but I think people at the highest level don't really keep the same drones all the time because everyone knows that that's just going to get you drone shot. So it's more like an area of drones that I try and look for. Do they commonly take their drone into the building from the same sort of route? Say for Chalet, there's a great spawn outside the dining drone hole. Does someone always drive their drone in there and then try and get the drone in kitchen or whatever? So it's just looking for like the routes at the drone entry and then like the general area, and then any habits like, as you could be the best player in the world, but you still have your go-to plays, your go-to entry paths, or when you enter a certain doorway, do they go left or right? If you're entering delivery on skyscraper, do you go towards reception? Do we all go towards pantry? Do you go jump in bathroom window? Can change on the site, but I think small things like that can really help players figure out how they can exploit for entry kills, or they can obviously exploit habits late rounds. If there's 5 alive for X attack, is any of those attackers on flank camps? If they're not, then brilliant. If you're against a team who someone who just loves to flank, well, rather than sitting on a flank on a drone, you just sit there with a gun instead, and you get the free kill every day of the week. So I really do look into habits and how you can exploit that to make your life easier on game day, really.
Yeah. When it comes to reviewing VODs, something that talking about the habits of players and teams, obviously, something that me and Mango kind of figured out a while back, that teams love to change game day to game day, especially other teams that will prep. Obviously, they'll change things. So, we started doing this thing called cross-examination, basically, where it's we'll take 3 of the most recent VODs on that map, even if it's from a past stage, and we'll go through and, essentially you put them all in a layer together, if that makes sense, and you're seeing what do they still repeat throughout those 3 games, essentially. And then like 3 is kind of the magic number. They repeat something 3 times in a row, they're probably gonna do it again in your game. That's what we tend to go after to counter a lot of times. And if a team's new, obviously they don't have that, then you gotta adjust the game plan how you actually go about reviewing that. But usually that's a magic number. You get 3, and then you can kind of just, like I said, just look at all the overlapping themes, and then you can create a pretty strong game plan for that team off of that a lot of times. And then we'll just get all that together, present that to the players through our slideshow for the game plan that we have, and then we'll review a couple rounds. We'll watch. We don't always watch the full VOD with the players. It'll be like we'll watch certain scenarios with the players back, like 45-second to a minute clips. We'll watch back, and then we'll just go through and practice that prep. Kind of like Eden said, we'll train it throughout that week if we have time. If not, it's like a back-to-back game day. Then we'll try to get a couple maps on that prep and game plan at least, and then we'll just go on and play.
Thank you, Callout. So, final topic is quick-fire questions. We got a few from the community to put towards you, coaches, and this could be open to any of you to answer. So, the first question was around timeouts. Do you feel like teams should get an attacking timeout and a defensive timeout, or do you think that one is the sweet spot?
No, I think we need both. To be honest,
Mhm.
you can fail miserably attack or defense and then be just a god on the other one. But just say you have the habit of failing attacks like we were doing. So you take your timeout during attack, and then for any reason defense is going bad, then basically you're done for. You can't correct what happened. So no, I would vote for double timeout.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, just to add context to that as well, like that happened to us at Invite against G2, not this last time, but the one before, was like we went down 0-3 on theme park against them. I called the timeout, and then we salvaged that attack after whatever it was, and then we came on to defense, and we completely forgot like one of our parameters in terms of like how we need to play against their info gain, and then we just couldn't bring that map back. So if we had 2 timeouts, it would have been a lot nicer to kind of redirect that. I think that it would be definitely a helpful thing to have 2 timeouts.
Maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's you take timeouts for different reasons. Like you can have momentum killing timeouts where your sole purpose of the timeout, say you've lost 3-4 rounds on the bounce, it can be purely to just kill momentum and get you back on track. It could be nothing strategic. In actually our first play day last week against Wolves, we were 1-1 on attacking consulate, then we lost the next 3 rounds on the bounce, and I didn't want to go in the half. Like I knew going into the half it was fine if we were 5-1 down, like even if we lost every other attack, it was fine because our defenses were good and their attacks were not so great. But I still took the timeout on the final attack to kill the momentum because we know Deadshot, Mowgli, they're heavy momentum players. If they've got a couple of rounds where they've got 3 or 4 kills in each round, that's just going to snowball. So I use a timeout for that, and then say, as Callout said, sometimes you can go into a side switch on the second half and you have a game plan for the second half, but because you've played 6 rounds prior, some of those things are lost. And it would be really useful to have a timeout for that in the second half to remind people of either game plans, prep work, or general philosophies that have been lost because of the first half.
Hopefully that's something that you could pass that feedback on, and maybe they'll listen to at some point, because it'll make for better games too if the coaches are able to have those ability to micromanage a bit more often. And then the last question that we got in, and this is kind of one that I'm going to open to all of you as well, is we're starting to see a lot more academy teams. We're starting to see rosters that are carrying a 6th player. Do you feel like in a best of 3 series, or do you feel like even on the attack defense swap, do you think teams should be allowed, if they have that 6th player or if they have a bigger roster, to sub a player out and sub a player in, if it's specifically at those times where it's the attack defending swap or a map swap in a best of 3?
I think that like if orgs were willing to pay for a 6th or 7th player, I would definitely love to have one, because not necessarily maybe just for a side swap, but more so to have like that option, and kind of like, because every time I ever played traditional sports, there's always a guy behind you, and if you're not performing, he's ready to take your spot. Where it's like, if you can kind of create that healthy competition within the team, obviously there is backsides to that as well. It can kind of create some insecurities perhaps, but I think having that in a healthy environment would be a positive thing. Having that kind of 6th player to be there who if somebody's not performing, maybe one day you can just slot him in and then he's ready to go. That guy's gonna be hungry, ready to go at all times because he wants to play. Obviously, he's gonna be working hard to kind of get that position. That's kind of my thought on it, though.
I don't really agree with that. Last time we've seen a 6-man roster like working was Penta back in the days, and the sixth one was a French guy named Falco. And I think that Fabian can testify that the mood in the team was not really good at the time. And it was even going worse from worse for his months going on. So I don't think it can be could be an RC competition like Callout said, but in my opinion, sorry, you need a really strong coach to have this. And most of us right now, no disrespect, I put myself in the bag. We can't do this. I think probably Fabian is the only one that can do this right now, or probably Julio. But we all have now time to manage these 6 guys, first of all. And secondly, the more you put people in, the more you need time for them to feel confident playing with each other, to know each other's play style. So as I said before, changing one guy is huge. So if you have 6 guys, you put player 5 in your game, okay, then you go the same map against the same opponents, but you swap player 5 for player 6, and then it's completely different. And those guys need to, player 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 need to know each other's. Then you swap player 4 for player 5, and you have player 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 that need to understand how to play with each other. And it's basically take not twice but probably 3x more time to achieve the same goal. So I wouldn't do it personally. I would keep a 5-man team, even if you don't perform. Like if you don't perform over 2 months is okay, then you wait for transfer window, change one guy. I prefer it this way than having one guy that you can swap every week or every day if needed.
Yeah, I side with Eden's opinion on that. I think to be the best, or just sieging generally, you have to focus on what's the word? My mind's just completely gone blank.
Chemistry. Is that what you're gonna say?
Like chemistry and consistency. There you go. And I think if you bring someone in and out, the consistency, then your consistency ceiling lowers because that player, as Eden said, it upsets balances and it upsets the understanding of players moving. Like they're making plays. You have your attacking strategies. You have your mini games to clear certain holds or certain positions, and then because you have a 6-man roster, does that 6th man know all that? And if he does, great, he's behind the scenes, he's watching every scrim, he's understanding the theory behind everything we're doing, but at the same time he's not getting any game time either. So then you bringing in do you swap them in every day for scrims, or do you do week by week with the same 5, or like someone is not playing the game as much as everyone else is my overall point on that. And I think I think Wild have done it for this stage, same with Ents in EUL, and on the face of things I disagree with it, but if teams, and I agree with Eden, you have to have a coach who understands how to make that work, and also you have to have an org that financially can back it. If the coach is strong enough to do it and the team understands and it is a healthy environment for work and it doesn't have its negatives, then great. But I also think you have a ceiling with a 6-man roster. I don't think you'll ever be consistently making majors, consistently performing at every single major if you do have the 6-man.
Yeah. I think it's no surprise that Kenny and me disagree with Callout, to be honest, because that's just different culture. Like in America, you're more of a coach culture than you. I was thinking that probably a US team could achieve this, but I don't see any EU team, to be honest, achieve this. I think players have a different relationship with the coach in EU than America, and this just can't work.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's kind of like you said. I mean, it would definitely have to be. I mean, it's like system first type deal, right? Where it's like you couldn't have like that same relationship. Like the players wouldn't have the same relationship with each other in a sense. It would be more so like, it'd be less friendship based, more so performance based. It would be hard to do. And like you guys said, I definitely think it would be a task. But if you do it right, I think it could potentially have upsides to it. That's kind of what I was looking towards.
Yeah. Well, look,
But I definitely get you guys' point of view off that, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's been a really good discussion today, but I think it's about time that we wrap up. I know that Kenny has got a busy night ahead of himself. We all have got stuff we need to kind of get done. So first off, I want to thank all of you for joining today. It's been great to talk to all three of you at the one time. It's a new format. Hopefully this can set the path for a whole new content type that's coming out. If you haven't, please make sure to give the guys follows on their socials, all of their ats on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. I think I'm always going to call it Twitter because I'm a man of habit. So it's KangruKenny, at Eden_SE_ and at Callout66. But guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. To the viewers at home, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all again next time for the next Siege sessions.